Which of these stories will you be talking about tomorrow? The staged AstroTurf protests at the healthcare town halls. No longer about the proposed reform. No longer even about healthcare. Now, transparent euphemisms for racism. Republican Congressman Todd Akin in Missouri.
Different people from Washington, D.C. have come back to their districts and held town hall meetings, and they almost got lynched.
At Blue Dog Democrat Mike Ross's town hall in Arkansas.
I have never seen my America turn into what it has turned into.
It isn't taxes, and it isn't Tea Parties, and it isn't stimuli, and it isn't Sotomayor, and it isn't health care reform, and it isn't the public option. Do some of these people simply fear and hate a black president? By the way, the right-wing mob had obviously moved on, without protest, without the sky falling, without almost any attention. Sonia Sotomayor is approved as the 111th Supreme Court Justice in our nation's history.
This is a wonderful day for Judge Sotomayor and her family, but I also think it's a wonderful day for America.
But a continued nightmare for America from Blackwater. More accusations under oath from two former employees. Founder Eric Prince hired mercenaries, veterans of the Chilean dictatorship of Pinochet, associates of ethnic cleanser Milosevic of the Balkans. And he provided Blackwater operatives with prostitutes in Iraq, some of them, quoting, young girls. Revenge of the physician in the wake of the assassination of George Tiller. Dr. Warren Hearn tells Esquire Tiller was killed by 35 years of, quote, hate speech. Quote, Bill O'Reilly is a disgrace to American society. He's full of blank. This is not a debate, it's a civil war, and the other people are using bullets and bombs. I think O'Reilly is a fascist, and he would fit right in Nazi Germany as far as I'm concerned, end quote. All that and more now on Countdown. Good evening from New York. A healthcare reform smear campaign that has gradually revealed itself to no longer have anything to do with healthcare reform. Our fifth story in the countdown, what is being said by Republican lawmakers and by Tea Party protesters, coordinated by the healthcare industry, now revealing that the fear being stoked seems to have far more to do with anger over who won the last presidential election than it does with who does and does not have healthcare insurance. President Obama today meeting with a bipartisan group of 6 senators from the Finance Committee about the health care bill that appears to be stuck in their limited negotiations. After the meeting, Democrat Max Baucus telling Politico that the lawmakers discussed the idea of a Democrats-only bill if the Republicans will not come aboard. And quoting him, if Republicans aren't there, it could get to the point where sometime after the recess, Democrats may have to go in a different direction. I hope not, but we have to face facts. I know. After he said that, some of us were tempted to card him to make sure he had ID, and it was really Max Baucus. Meanwhile, town hall meetings across the country now appearing to be more about the man Senator Baucus met with today, the president, than about the health care reform that the president is trying to enact. In St. Louis County, Missouri, where Republican Todd Akin addressed constituents, the friendly crowd just loving it when the Republican congressman joked about the lynchings Democrats are receiving at their own events.
Different people from Washington, D.C. have come back to their districts and held town hall meetings, and they almost got lynched. So the people... You're not approving lynchings because we don't like it. But the point is, people were really upset at some of this legislation, and with very good reason they were upset.
Mr. Akin, never assume. Largely upset because of the misinformation they have been steadily fed by the Republican spin and the AstroTurf groups formed by the healthcare industry. Oh, and unlike his Democratic colleagues, Congressman Akin did not take any questions from his audience. An unruly crowd heckling Democrats Vic Snyder and Mike Ross, the leader of the Blue Dogs, when those congressmen took questions yesterday at Arkansas Children's Hospital in Little Rock. One woman nearly reduced to tears, not because she fears her health care insurance will be taken away, but because she fears her America has been taken away.
I have never seen my America turn into what it has turned into.
Lots to talk about tonight with our own Jonathan Alter, senior editor at Newsweek magazine. Thanks for coming in, John.
Hi, Keith.
Is that scare that's in evidence at that meeting and other town hall meetings, is it about the health care plan that's being negotiated by Congress, or is it fear and anger about the man who won the presidential election November last? And is there an odd sense here that we could have been looking in these videos at something that came from a McCain-Palin rally?
Yeah, it does seem reminiscent of some of those rallies. They're right on the edge there of advocating violence or other kinds of things. There is a kind of a crack in the common sense of America right now. You're starting to see this. But I think in some ways this is good for passage of the bill, because if we didn't hear about all of this and the anger and wackiness of some of these town meetings, we might actually confuse what's going on there with American public opinion. And we're now at a point in our political dialogue where we're beyond that. And so I think in some ways the backlash is now set in against these town meetings and the kind of behavior we're seeing there, and it won't have the effect of derailing the bill. There might be some other things that are bigger problems, like the big deficit numbers that are going to come out tomorrow, but I don't think these town meetings are going to send everything off track.
If Republicans like Mr. Akin are able to make jokes about lynching, no matter what disclaimer they follow it with, might the White House actually be preparing to go this alone without Republicans? Is that what that meeting with the 6 senators was about today?
Well, that is something that President Obama does not want to have to do, but he may end up there. It may be like the stimulus, where they get a couple of Republicans in the Senate, maybe Olympia Snowe, 1 or 2 others. And in the House, they get none. That could very possibly happen. The bigger problem the Democrats have right now is with the blue dog Democrats. They've got to hold them in line. Essentially what you have is the Republicans are the party of no, and the Democrats need to be the party of yes. They can argue about the details, but the idea of sustaining the status quo is unacceptable. And Democrats all over the country have to just come out and say, we need a bill. Argue about what's going to be in it, but don't talk about there being no bill.
When you hear some of the things in these that actually do supposedly reference health care, some of them are, no better word for it, so dense as to be amazing. You want to try to sort of bat back some of these things? Since nobody ever hears the debunkings. At least we give it a try. Yeah. All right, the first one is from the Arkansas Town Hall, and this one's kind of standard.
There's like, say, 100% of Americans in America. 80% of us have insurance. Maybe more. I'm saying this is just kind of the general question. Why do 80% of us have to change and get something that y'all, the government, President Obama, who came in with an agenda? Why do we have to change our way of life for that 20%? Congress's job is mainly to protect us from terrorists, enemies, the borders, and people that want to do us harm.
This is, there's 2 elements here. This is the old, I've got mine, so screw you, I'm already in the rowboat, you can swim argument. But it's also the, you're going to change my insurance thing. How do you answer the sort of deep-seated emotion that's behind that? Because clearly it's not based on facts.
Well, first of all, she's right that 80%, have health care. Where she's wrong is that somehow, if they've got it, it's going to be enough for them, or they're not going to be in danger of losing it should they lose their job. A lot of people nowadays are losing their jobs. So what she's not factoring in is what happens to people who have some sort of a change that happens in their lives. They get sick, they actually need health insurance, and it ends up being like homeowners, insurance, where once you have a burglary, suddenly they cancel your insurance. Right. That's what health insurance is like, and people who have not had big health challenges, as I have and others, don't understand that just because you're insured doesn't mean you're protected. Right. The second thing that she's ignoring is the promise that President Obama has made, which is that if you're happy with your insurance, it's not going to get taken away. I mean, if she loves her insurance company, God bless her, but she's not going to have any problem with that insurance company. It's not in any danger of going bust. They might jack up their premiums on her again, but
or lower it because there's competition from the public option.
Frankly, she, I think, is pretty confused because she looks like a Medicare recipient.
Right.
And I love these folks who say, you know, stop socialized medicine, but don't touch my Medicare.
Sorry, I hate to break it to you, but all right, let me move on to this next one here because it actually hits on an actual problem.
I don't have health insurance right now because I'm limited to be able to buy simple catastrophic because Congress will not open up the free competition of insurance companies across state lines. I trade in and out of health company stocks, United Healthcare, Aetna, and I'm making good money at it because you guys are churning the momentum of those price stocks.
Besides the fact that he seems to be making money off the insurance industry here, which seems to me to be the headline in his statement, he's correct because Blue Cross Blue Shield controls 3/4 of the market in Arkansas, and Obama said that a public option would keep the insurance companies honest. Without the public option, what's the answer to this guy's question?
Well, there has to be some kind of cooperative, maybe what they call a souped-up cooperative, one that can actually withstand pressure from insurance companies, which in the past have taken something like Blue Cross, which was originally nonprofit, and turned it into just another insurance company. So the problem with the co-op idea is that they have been putty in the hands of the insurance companies. But there still is room for compromise there, because if they could design a new kind of co-op that could provide some real competition. It could be essentially a public-private option that satisfies enough people to get something through. So I don't think liberals should go, you know, public option or bust. There are other alternatives, and they have to remember that there are many, many important things in this bill that have become almost non-controversial. That 2 years ago, if you had been told they're going to end discrimination against people with pre-existing conditions, they're going to insure another 30 million Americans, we'd say, great, where do we sign up? And now some progressives are maybe a little bit too wed to the public option, even though I favor it too. Yeah. But we shouldn't go down with the ship with the public option.
But of course, now, as we discussed, that relatively narrow debate, co-op public option, super co-op public option, or maybe the super co-op is the public option, there is still an undercurrent to all of this, which is addressed in this next question, which is about something that actually isn't in the bill, although thousands, millions of people think it is, this single-payer system. Listen to this.
Mike and I do not support a single-payer system. We're not interested in a single-payer system.
That's
We're not
bull.
interested in expanding Medicare to the best of the population. We don't support a single-payer system.
But that's what Obama wants.
So, no, it's not what President Obama wants.
The congressman then spends 9.5 hours trying to convince the crowd that the public option is not actually in the bill, or the public option is in the bill, but the single-payer system is not in the bill. Right. But Fox comes on and spends 24 hours a day saying it is in the bill, or it's what Obama will then introduce. Right. The right-wing misinformation machine has scored a victory on this to get this into people's heads, have they not?
Yes. I mean, they just shout all day, Rush Limbaugh and all the rest of them, that this is a Trojan horse for a single-payer plan. And it is, you know, it is possible that over time this will morph into something that resembles single-payer, but it's not that right now. And the insurance companies are in no danger of going out of business under this bill, under any version of this bill. So if we do end up with a single-payer plan, it won't be for many, many years. And people who argue to the contrary are just lying about the particulars of this program. Obama, by design, did not move to single-payer because he realized that the country wasn't ready for it.
We have news that cash for clunkers has just passed, which we'll get to in detail, the extension of that in a minute. But I want to go to this last piece of tape because this is the heart of the thing. The last questioner went into this long diatribe asserting how the president would somehow get his legislation passed, you know, without Congress. He'd just go in and make it happen because obviously he's dictator Obama, he's not the president. And she ended with this piece of tape.
I don't believe, sincerely, I don't believe that the Constitution of the United States of America is going to be upheld in this issue.
We've seemed to have come full circle here. Paranoia and anger and My America. What happened to the debate about health care? How did these people get convinced that they're going to be, burned at the stake? Is that what they're expecting to have happen here?
Well, look, anytime you have wrenching social change, which this will bring, this is a big piece of legislation. You're going to have a lot of folks who are going to be anxious about it. So in that sense, I'm sympathetic to this woman. But if you pay close attention, you recognize that all of this is very much along the sort of median strip of American politics. It's not out to the left. It's certainly not out to the right. It's not going to make a huge difference in most people's lives. All that it's going to do is give people more choice, hopefully lower costs over time, even though it'll cost more initially, and end the fear that all of us should have of what happens to us should we lose our jobs and get sick. For us not to be addressing that, to just continue to discriminate against people who are ill, that's the real outrage, and that really has to be ended this fall.
And you just used the phrase that perhaps should have been used all along. We are discriminating against people who are ill. Sell it that way, and maybe that would have gotten across a little more easily.
It's a civil rights issue, and it's also a security issue. People should not have to worry. This was the theme of FDR's presidency. You know, I'm kind of obsessed with that. But, you know, social security and then collective security internationally. This is health security. It's completing FDR's unfinished agenda. People shouldn't have to worry about this. It's bad enough to be sick without having to worry about how you're going to pay for it. That's what Barack Obama's own mother went through at the end of her life. It's just wrong that Americans should have to endure that in 2009.
Jonathan Alter of Newsweek and MSNBC. Great. Thanks for putting some of the nails and little eyes and nailing them to the wall that way. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
And breaking news, as we mentioned on the Cash for Clunkers program, the Senate, in its final act before its August recess, has passed a bill for $2 billion in additional funding, the vote of 60 to 37. The House had overwhelmingly approved that emergency funding for the $1 billion program, moving the money from other stimulus funds. Many Republicans tried to defeat the House version with its numerous amendments, but to no avail. Those rebates of up to $4,500 for new cars with the trade of certain gas guzzlers will continue. The bill now goes to the White House for the president's signature. Putting aside the seriousness of health care reform and what might be racism tidied up and made it to look like anything but, the fascinating part of the health care debate is that juxtaposed against what actually happened in Washington today, it makes the Republicans look like drive-by opportunists who are moving from booth to booth at a county fair, stopping to fire a water pistol here and throw a few baseballs at a milk carton there in hopes of scoring a Kewpie doll. 6 weeks ago, the confirmation of Sonia Sotomayor to the Supreme Court was, from the GOP pronounced point of view, the coming of the apocalypse. And it had to be defeated by invoking a message just this side of George Wallace and the White Power Party. Today, she was confirmed to the Supreme Court, and the world not only did not end, 9 Republicans voted for her, and then they moved on to the ring toss booth.